on your Alexa-powered smart speaker and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Good piece from our friends Samuel Abrams and Joel Kotkin over at RealClearPolitics.com. The rise of the single, woke, and young Democrat female. The whole conversation we've, been having for years, but in particular part since the November 8th midterms, with the focus on the Dobbs decision and the abortion issue is driving the female vote that led to Republican underperformance and so forth. It's just, and as I've been arguing, it's just so much more complicated than that singular issue, and you have to really get into the crosstabs when it comes to the female vote. It is hardly monolithic. There are great differences in political persuasions, socioeconomically, demographically, by age and region. The attitudes, age and thus generation as well. And then, of course, married versus single. So let's get into it, as challenging as I find this topic. Sam Abrams, professor of politics at Sarah Lawrence College, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute as well. Sam, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, the rise of the single, woke, and young Democrat female. What is a conservative guy to do short of having to marry one of them to get them to turn them around?
The intro was really fantastic, and that's you hit that nail on the head with that very, very question. After the November elections, we tried to figure out what the heck is going on and where support is and where it isn't for the GOP. And we discovered men, they lean to the right. They're, married, unmarried, they're GOP supporters. When we look at women, I think you called it exactly correctly. Many women support the GOP, in particular, married women, in particular, older women. What we discovered very quickly, though, was that younger single women are breaking very hard for the Democrats right now. And that's a problem, not just because they're breaking for the Democrats, but what underlies the reason that they're breaking for the Democrats. And that's the cultural shift that we're really trying to talk about. This is a group in society that's getting bigger. We have growing numbers of single women who are not getting married, who are not having children, and they are becoming increasingly liberal, and they are becoming the ones who are pushing the Democrats to take more and more extreme positions against our traditional institutions. They're not supporting families. They're not supporting parental choice in schools, all the issues that those of us on the right care deeply about right now.
But, I mean, the feminist approach is, you can take care of yourself. You don't need a man. You don't need a child. And don't you think the Democratic Party embraces that?
They shouldn't. They shouldn't. And the numbers show that most Americans actually don't believe in that. No one is saying that you can't have some independence. Of course, everyone should have some independence. But it's what I view right now as sort of an immature view of the world. You can have it all, but not have it all. You can, have not make commitments. You don't have to have children. You don't have to realize that you have to give a little to be in a healthy society. It's not all about you all the time. And if you come to our college and university campuses, where I am right now, look at the messaging these younger folks are getting. The messaging is you can have it all. You don't need kids. You don't have you don't need families. You don't need to make a trade-off for anything. And people should just be giving you things. This is really, not a healthy view about society, and not going to lead to, one that I would want to, raise my own kids in.
Well, exactly. And so, when Ari Fleischer said over the weekend, talking about Kamala Harris's selective editing of the Declaration of Independence, the preamble, he said, by this, he was critical of her, appropriately so, but he said, by the same token, thinking about this politically, Republicans needed to think about how to appeal to pro-choice centrist women. And what I believe, and I'd be interested in your take from the research you and Joel Kotkin did, is the idea that you can just say, okay, all right, we'll give you the first trimester. And that's going to bring these young single hard left women who've been indoctrinated at college campuses running to the GOP is pure folly. It is so much bigger than that, and their radical pro-abortion position is a manifestation of something larger.
No, I completely agree. First trimester, second, third, doesn't matter. That's not what's going on. That's a small part of it, but it's not all of it. And what I think people need to remember is that when you step on a college or university campus today, it's overwhelmingly women. Men are disappearing, and I think we've talked about that more and more women men are
60-40, right? Undergrad degree, 60-40.
Yeah, and if you're at a place like Sarah Lawrence, where I am right now, it's even higher than that. Of course, this is traditionally a women's school. However, men are being forced out of this. So we're not talking about just the abortion issue. There is a much deeper cultural issue going on, and this is why Joel and I wanted to talk about this so deeply, which is this is a rejection of traditional norms. This is a rejection of traditional institutions, the very institutions that, have built this country. What has helped build this country? It's a rejection of faith. It's a rejection of community at large. It's a rejection of needing family and support. And it's a rejection of saying, look, this is not just pure transactional. There are, I pay for this, you pay for that, you do this for me, I do that for you. This is about these norms of reciprocity and norms of support that are just gone. And, this is the toxicity that we see being taught regularly on college and university campuses today by the administrators. And then the women leave and bring this into the workforce. And they're not married. They're not coupling off.
Well, what are the economics of singleness?
So the economics of singleness, this is something we see quite a bit, is that people are struggling, right? I mean, people are better off when they are married for the most part. If you have two people working, the costs become more affordable. The other thing I want to mention with the singleness, which is important with your lead, is that there is a very big geographic component to this, and that is that we see this support in urban centers. This is very much like Sex and the City from a number of decades ago, where you have these single women moving to these urban cores. This is not where most Americans want to be, by the way. The research that Joel and I have done for quite a while is showing that there is a continued exodus from our cities. So what we're seeing is almost an amplification effect, where most Americans are rejecting the extreme left politics that we're seeing in most of our urban cores. Families and even single folks on the right want to live in suburbs and, quite frankly, exurbs in rural areas. They can do that now. We have the technology to do that. People like that. They like the space. So what we're seeing is this echo chamber where you have these single women. They're moving to these urban cores. They're talking amongst themselves, and it's sort of ramping up in intensity. So you're now surrounded by this echo chamber of people saying, we reject these norms. We don't need men. We're going to do our thing. We're going to rent these small apartments. We're going to go have our brunch, our avocado toast and the like, which I actually do like personally. It's getting weirder and more extreme. And this is a group we need to pay a lot of attention to. Abortion is one thing. But it's a rejection of these other institutions and faith and family wholesale in this rhetoric that we need to be careful of, too.
So I don't just want to be, I know your focus on this piece was women, but let's have a larger conversation because I want to be critical of men, too. There's a lot of P-hat men running around that are just as problematic, that are just as deconstructionist, that are just as indoctrinated by postmodernism and rejecting these norms you're talking about. And so on the male side, there's a lot of guys that want a woman who is working, want a woman who's educated and is working and is growing the overall household income because they're Marxist materialists just like the women are. And so they may disagree on whatever, Trump versus Biden, but the P-hat man will tolerate the shrieking Marxist overeducated wife because there's money in it. So there's that dynamic going on too. Maybe that's a little bit of a harsh characterization, but that's what I intended it to be. So, but I mean that what
I want, my needs. It's very therapeutic. A lot of cognitive behavioral therapy in there, which has crept, by the way, into our language in colleges and universities regularly. And what it does is it focuses you away from looking outside, but looking only inside about what's best for you. These other institutions say, yes, what you care about, what you need matters. It absolutely does. But you have to give a little bit of yourself, too. When you have kids, you do that. Your kids come before you. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Sometimes they come before the career. When you're married, it's not all about you. You have to make trade-offs. The problem here is that a lot of these women don't see it. They're not being taught that. It's being amplified in these pockets where Democrats just have very powerful, loud voices.
But I mean, on the male side, I mean, there's a lot of godless men too, and
Yep.
even though society has now oriented the family away from being able to support themselves on one income, and that's a larger problem too of government. The single younger single Democrats, females. So what do they want other than they just like you were describing? They just want things handed to them. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. I can have everything on my terms on my timeline. But what do you think has any appeal to get them off of that? Are we just to sit back and wait for a great religious awakening again, or is there somebody that can deprogram them or something?
So I would argue, and again, this is not based on great data because we don't have it. So thank you again for asking about some of this, because we can look into this and we can really dig deep and get some better answers on this. In my experience, working with thousands of them as a college professor in New York and around the country, in many cases they don't know. It's reactionary anger. It's there being, this is the echo chamber we've talked about so often, saying, you've been harmed. This is the victimization. You've been harmed. You're entitled to this. You should be doing that. And the world is against you. Therefore, push back. But when you dig just a little deeper, they don't even know what they want at all. And we do have great data showing that married people, for the most part, are happier and more content in the long run. We've seen data that show that having kids can be very frustrating and stressful for periods, but on the whole leads to greater life satisfaction. We have those great longitudinal studies that show that. So a big part of this deprogramming, has to take place in the workplace, has to take place with diversity offices shutting down, or if they exist, to stop, spewing this leftist, propaganda. It has to stop occurring at the university and college level, and honestly, it has to stop at the high school and middle school level too, where we're getting this messaging and very, very powerfully and very dangerously as well.
He is Sam Abrams, professor of politics at Sarah Lawrence College, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute as well. The Rise of the Single, Woke, and Young Democrat Female at RearClearPolitics.com. I'll tweet it out, too, because it's a really good piece. Sam and our friend Joel, great work as always. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
And thank you.
They joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Here we are in 2023 with a shaky economy, global unrest, and chronic inflation. Feeling a bit out of control? Well, there's one thing you can take control of, and that's your IT department. Protect and prepare your company in the new year with Turnkey's All-In Plan. This is Turnkey's best and most popular strategy for small businesses. It's all-inclusive and priced to save you thousands. Now through January 31st, Turnkey will pay for your first month of all-in support. That's the first month